Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. You know, we're always about the positive vibes here on the show, and I've got a very special guest with me today. He is an up-and-coming professional wrestler, currently residing in Canada, has trained with Seth freaking Rollins, one of the top stars of today's professional wrestling period. And we're going to get into it. I'm pleased to welcome the one and only Keegan Dimitrijevic. Welcome, Keegan.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Let's get into this. So tell me about your upbringing in childhood. Where are you from?
I was born in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, which is right across from Detroit. So if you've ever been to Detroit, there's Ford Field and there was the Joe Louis Arena. It's the city directly across the Detroit River.
Okay. Yeah, it's a border between the US and Canada. I think if I remember correctly, when I was maybe a baby, 2 years old, I went to Windsor. It's pretty amazing, you know, just right on that line. Canada's got a lot of wrestling history, chock full of it. Different provinces like Montreal and Toronto, a lot of greats have come out of there. Tell me about some of your like early experiences watching wrestling.
Wow. I was born in 2001. So unfortunately, I didn't get to watch the Attitude Era live. I didn't get to watch the territories live. I wish I could have. But at least we have the WWE Network here. So I've been able since childhood to go back and watch everything, which I have. I made a goal when I was about 10 years old that I was going to watch every single ounce of pro wrestling that I can find that is on TV. So, most of my birthday and Christmas gifts were pro wrestling DVDs or they were pro wrestling books. All I did was watch wrestling DVDs, whether they were like anthologies or if they were documentaries or if they were just a series of great matches. Like, for example, one of the things that I was really interested in when I was younger was WCW. Even though they closed about 6 months before I was born. So again, I never had the chance to watch it live. So I think it was that nostalgia feeling I wanted to have of watching what I never had the chance to watch. So as a kid, I watched more WCW than I did WWE because like there was still Raw and SmackDown. Live SmackDown was on Thursdays when I was younger. So uh, I could still watch SmackDown. Raw was on till about 11, so I had a timeline that I was allowed to watch Raw till about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then I had to go to bed. So I would just stay up in my room, put on the DVD player. It was like a small DVD player about this big, and I put on like the history of WCW or the history of the 10 pounds of gold, the NWA World Heavyweight title. So my childhood was mostly just studying pro wrestling and not caring about anything else that existed.
So you knew that this is what you wanted to do after watching the some of the greats in the business. Tell me about like your training process, because when I've talked to people on the show, they've told me their stories. Of course, it's not ballet. It's tough. It's brutal. It's intense. What was your experience like?
Intense. Intense for sure, but in a good way because I think pro wrestling teaches a lot of life lessons, and you learn a lot about what you can do and not what you can't do because a lot of people will focus on what they can't do. It's like that glass analogy, right? Do you look at the glass that's half full or half empty? And for me, I tried to take the half full approach where it's like, okay, we're half full, but how can we get to full eventually? What's it going to take for me to pour more water in the glass for it to reach the top? So I came in, and like I've always been in shape. I've always been able to stay in shape, but not look in shape, if that makes sense. So again, it's that cosmetic thing. So it was hard because like I could power lift and I could lift heavy and I could do things athletically, but it's about looking the part too, right? So I came in and to Black and Brave and I wanted to just improve cardio and I wanted to have a look that would separate me from everybody else. And to do that, you have to go through the training process. And the training process, yeah, it's taking bumps, it's taking hip tosses, it's learning how to clothesline and things like that. But you really, when you're doing that, you don't even realize how much better you're getting in terms of building your confidence. It's like, yeah, you go in and you're nervous and it's not easy. And it's a big intimidation factor, especially when you see people that are training you now that have already made it and they have this aura about them when they walk in and you go, oh wow, like that's so and so. And you have to kind of snap yourself out of that at the beginning to really focus. And because if you're just starstruck the whole time, then you're not going to learn anything and you're going to come back in the next day and you're going to get hurt because you didn't listen to the prior things that they were teaching you. So that was an adjustment. But once you start doing it and you learn how to bump properly and you learn how to start selling and you start, I don't want to say you start getting complimented, but you start getting the benefit of the doubt of being like, oh wow, like this kid's really trying to do this. Then it's a confidence booster to come in and be like, okay, what can I learn today? So that was big for me.
Yeah, I like what you mentioned about like if you see somebody big walk into your school, you don't want to get distracted because you're there to do your job and learn and pay attention and focus, and it requires a lot of discipline. One of the guys that you trained under when you broke into the business was Seth freaking Rollins. Uh, one of the top stars in the WWE. I mean, tell me about what he was like to work with starting out.
Intimidating, but in a good way. Again, I think it goes back to my analogy of having a really big name walk in and you go, oh wow, that's Seth Rollins. That guy's multiple time world champion in WWE. He's done everything in this industry, and now I get to get in the ring with him. And I've never been in a ring before. So that was really intimidating from the beginning, but he is very relatable with us because he's not old school yet, but he learned an old school way. So he had a lot of patience with really molding us into the way that he thought we should be. And one of the things that I get asked a lot too is like, "Oh, did you learn how to springboard do like a springboard curb stomp?" And I said, "No." I said because we were taught the foundations of wrestling. We were taught footwork, we were taught timing, pacing, how to execute properly. We were taught psychology because that's the way that Seth was taught as well. So we learned that because that's what you need to learn. If you want to learn more acrobatics, that's more on your own time. If you want to get in the ring somewhere and just practice that, by all means do that. But the main focus that we had was to really get good technically and to get good with knowing our body. So for instance, like when you're getting slammed, in order to avoid injury, how to fall properly when you're doing that, if that makes sense. So and also to how to execute things without hurting yourself. Because that's another thing. You can do stuff to people and you might land them safely, but if you hurt yourself, it's just as bad. So we were taught a lot of that, and we were taught a lot of just the basics, which is what every wrestler needs to know. If you don't know the basics, then wrestling's going to be extremely difficult for you. But the training regimen was really good though in terms of getting us in shape because I learned to like CrossFit. Let's put it that way. The day he walked in, we sat there and we looked and we're like, oh man, like and I had like met wrestlers as a fan, but like when you're getting into it and you see somebody like that and you go, okay, you're working with him now, that's a big motivator, but at the same time you're like, okay, don't mess up. Don't say anything wrong. Don't act like, for lack of a better term, don't act like a mark. Don't ask him too many questions. But it's funny because at the beginning of the day, he literally sat with us and just was normal and he's like, whatever questions you guys have, just get them out today. So we kind of had a pass to kind of get that out, but after that, it was down to business. So because I think if he wouldn't have addressed that, then everybody just would have been doing it throughout the whole time. So I think it was good at the beginning to be like, okay, whatever questions you have, what my favorite match is, who I like working with the most at WrestleMania, for instance, ask me now. So because then after that, we got to get down to the grit of our training. So he was really relatable. I had the pleasure of working with him a lot in terms of character, in terms of promo psychology, and I learned so much from him during the time that I was there that I thought, man, like these guys are so lucky that I get to work with him. on Raw and on SmackDown, especially the younger guys. Like they probably learned so much from him just from working with him once that they can pass that knowledge on to so many other people.
I should mention too, you had another trainer that worked at the same academy,
Marek Brave,
Marek Brave. What was he like to be around?
amazing, amazing. I had to get used to the American sense of humor though, because Canadians and Americans have a little bit of a different dialect. So getting used to some of the pop culture references and things like that, I didn't really know. So then they like, for example, Merrick would say a pop culture reference to me about like, whatever, and I would be like, what does that mean? So for example, I didn't know what the word bet means. Like I know what it means in the literal sense, but like I didn't know what it meant in the slang term. So they would say, all right, bet. And I'm like, I'd looked and I'd be in the ring and be like, what does that mean? And he'd look at me and be like, you don't know? I'm like, dude, I'm Canadian. I don't know what that means. So then he would tell me, and he's like, well, what do you guys learn in Canada? I said, Merrick, I'm in English right now in university. Like, I'm learning something. I just don't know what your slang terms mean. So that was kind of funny. We had a really good relationship, and I still talk to him quite frequently. I'm gonna hopefully visit down there soon.
Let's kind of switch gears now and talk about some of the charity work and things that you've done outside of wrestling. What kind of things have you done to help your community?
So I remember when I went back to high school in 2018, there was like a non-for-profit organization called Sport for All, which initially I wasn't a part of, but I did become a part of and helped out a lot with. So it was meant to get people in the community who couldn't afford to play organized sports and let them play for free, essentially. So in the downtown Windsor, there was a lot of problems. Like there was a lot of unemployment problems, not because people weren't looking, but just because of the economy. And one person had the idea of kind of having spaces that they could have people play floor hockey, for example. And I just went the one day because I was asked to. Like a friend from high school was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go down there and like just play floor hockey. Do you want to go?" And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I played hockey before and I just kind of didn't want to play anymore. But I was like, okay, I'll go down, and I did. And I met a guy by the name of Christian Bouchard who ended up running it, and he started talking to me a little bit about hockey, and I don't watch it now. The game has changed too much for me, but I loved hockey from the 70s to the early 2000s. So I talked to him about that. And it spiraled from there. I just went and I played floor hockey with other people and had fun. And then all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, do you want to do some like voluntary work for this?" And I was like, "Sure." So then I started going every single week, twice a week to help run this. And we would just get people in the community. It didn't matter what age. They could be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever. But it was meant for people, once again, that couldn't afford organized hockey or just couldn't afford to even go skating and just come and have fun. And it wasn't meant to be intense. It wasn't meant to be competition based. It was just people having fun. So that was a part of it. And then starting again when I went back in high school, I started getting bigger into the mental health field. Once I realized that there was a support system for it. Because initially, like when someone has mental health issues, a lot of times they think that it's them against the world, right? And it's the farthest thing from the truth. And I found that out in high school, like in my last year. Because then my high school started having me go out and do talks for it.
Hmm.
And I started doing talks for mental health, and I am still trying to do that to this day. You've probably seen on my Twitter and that, like the sick not weak stuff that
Yeah.
I promote. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because with them, they are arguably the biggest mental health non-for-profit organization in Canada that helps people with various mental health issues, and they don't. There's no discrimination against it, against like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder or even depression. There's a support system that they give for absolutely everybody, and there's no charge to it whatsoever. You have the liberty of speaking candidly about how you feel or what you go through on a daily basis, and that's what we need here and in the States and worldwide. And they helped me out in a time in 2020 that I really needed it, and ever since then I've been a part of that community, and I do whatever I can to give back to that. And in wrestling, it's the other thing. If you ever see my my pants or my knee pads or whatever, they have the hashtags on them because that's a Sick Not Weak logo. Because I told them that I would always do what I can to promote it and sponsor it in a way. So I have their hashtag as one of my main logos on my pants. So
Nice.
yeah, and so Michael Landsberg, who's the founder of Sick Not Weak, he does the talks for them, and I've
Yeah, off the
talked to
record.
him about going on board with him when the time is right to go do them with him. So we're getting that ball rolling too. And we actually just did a wrestling show that was called Fight with the Sick Not Weak as well to get
Very,
that
very cool.
mental health awareness rolling. Yeah, I guess it's my gimmick. I mean, like, because it's something I'm very passionate about. So the goal is just to bring it into pro wrestling and tell pro wrestlers that, hey, like this toxic masculinity that you go through on a daily basis, you don't need to do that. Like we're human beings. Granted, we're larger than life, but human beings all have their own issues that they're going through, and you should never be deemed a liability for your mental health problems.
No. And amazing that you're able to do that. And I wish you the best of luck. That's a really cool thing that you're doing. I just want to tell you that keep on
Thank
going.
you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah,
This has been really nice getting to chat with you, Keegan.
yeah.
You're doing a lot of really cool things, getting your break in the business. I wish you the best of luck. And I just want
I
to say
appreciate
thank
that.
you. Yeah, of course. Thank you again for coming on to the podcast. Where can people find you on social media if they want to get in touch with you or want to find out more about what you're doing?
So I've expanded a bit. I'm usually on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. But you can follow me there at the Keegan RW. You can follow me on Instagram again at the Keegan RW. I made a TikTok just because I guess it's the cool thing to do now. So I'm trying to get that going. So you can follow me on there, at the Keegan RW. Also, I do YouTube, but I'm not like a YouTuber per se. But I put my matches on there if they're not on other places. I'll put my own matches on YouTube, so you can follow that again at the Keegan RW. So and Facebook too. You can also follow me there at the Keegan RW. So I'm trying to keep it all going. I'm trying to run it all at the same time, run 5, 6 different social media platforms. But I would say right now that Twitter is probably my biggest and Instagram. So I'm trying to build my Instagram as big as the Twitter is right now. So that's been my kind of my mission for the last year.
Yeah. This has been awesome, Keegan. Thank you again, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Yeah, I would love to.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, you as well. Have a good day.
You too.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.